mit ein großreisiger Maid, bald entbrennt brünstiger Streit. Brünnhilde Sturm zum Kampf, den Welt Kiesel sie Sieg. Und ich will sich, wenn gehört, nach Fallhall, taugt mir nicht. Drum rüstig und rasch, reitet zur Wahl.
This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is up on Center Stage, the show about the arts and the artists behind their work. Heroism is endurance for one moment more. Well, I like those words of American diplomat and historian George F. Kennan. I feel that it is likely that they speak to each and every one of us at moments in our lives when we are challenged to the limit. In our current arts climate in the United States and the United Kingdom, we are being challenged with a lack of funding, both private and governmental, for arts organizations to survive. But there are individuals who are fighting for the right of our precious artistic lives to prevail. My guest today is a man who has challenged himself to the limit and been able to find one moment more, getting back to that quote, in his work and in his projects. Professional musician, conductor, arranger, organist, choral conductor, and pianist, Ben Woodward has been defining himself by envisioning and producing operatic performances and recordings for years. What is significant about this fact is that he has made fund development to produce these projects into his own personal successful art form. And he has done this alone. Heroism here is endurance. And it has paid off. His opera company, Regents Opera, has been performing the 4 operas of Richard Wagner's Ring Cycle over the past 2 years. The performance of the 3rd opera, Siegfried, within the cycle, has just completed in London at the Freemasons Hall in Covent Garden, and it was quite simply a triumph. From Ben's arrangement of a mammoth Wagnerian-sized orchestra slimmed down to 24 instruments, which, by the way, never loses excitement, and exciting singing from the outstanding cast, Siegfried was the ticket in London, gaining 4- and 5-star reviews from The Times, The Guardian, and many other newspapers and online reviews. I was there and experienced a performance that raised Regents Opera to a new level of excellence, brimming with confidence. And as the reviews stated, Maestro Woodward has persevered in the face of dwindling financial support from the Arts Council in the UK, which has been a hot topic in all the news. Besides his work as assistant conductor at the Royal Opera House, Ben has also conducted in German opera houses in Hanover, Gelsenkirchen, Flensburg, and Neustrelitz. He currently lives in Berlin, which seems to be the center of art and music in the world right now. Well, the bravo comes back to Ben Woodward, his vision, his arrangements for orchestra, and his tenacity. Ben, welcome back to Center Stage. It is so great to have you.
Yeah, lovely to be back.
I was correct in all those accolades, wasn't I? I mean,
I absolutely. I only did assistant conductor at the Royal Opera once, which was
right.
that was for Trovatore last year. I assisted Maestro Papano on the on Trovatore, which was learned so much in the space of just a few weeks. But yeah, maybe we'll come back to that. Anyway,
maybe we'll come back to that. So you're on a high after this triumph, as I referred to it, in London with Siegfried.
It's been an extraordinary thing. It was 6 massive weeks. putting it together. We all got there on the 1st of January, and we just closed this past Saturday, the 10th. So it's been 6 weeks, absolute whirlwind. The putting it together with director Caroline Staunton. I mean, you said in the introduction, the heroism, the thing, and being alone. I can't stress enough how I think the thing that this is all about is putting together a team to do this. I mean, I know you talk about this with your singers. The team I have got in London, and indeed several of them are from here in Berlin. I think it is those people who deserve the accolades as much as me, really. They've been just superb in their drive and determination to make this thing a huge success.
It is so true. The thing I was really referring to is you being alone was the fundraising element. I mean, this is something I want to talk about with you today and single out because, I understand it takes a village, to create something like what you are doing with Regent's Opera and doing it so well. And I've got to say, the powers that be around the world have noticed you for this. And your determination, your vision, and actually, you wear many hats, and one of those is fundraising, and you've been rather good at it.
Well, I've got a lovely following, which has come as much by accident as by design. I mean, I've got couple of five-figure donors who have continued to be really helpful. When some guy, it was on the day of the second performance, I think one of my donors said, "Ben, I'm really looking forward to it tonight. I've just put in another £5,000 into your account. Don't tell my wife." And it's like they're brilliant people who really appreciate what I'm doing,
Yes.
who are willing to put their money where their mouth is, and also the willingness to ask as well. I think that is something I've realized, and I've spoken about many times in the past, that if you want to put on these artistic endeavors, you've got to ask for the money. You have to go out there, be that if that's writing a grant application, that's one thing. But the going and talking to people and saying, "This is what I'm doing, and this is why it is important." To a certain degree, it's salesmanship. I think I told you I read Arnold Schwarzenegger's book recently. He has this one chapter and he says, if you want to do this, you've got to sell, sell, sell. The whole point is, if you've got an entrepreneurial idea, you've got to be the one to sell it. You've got to say to people, don't be unrealistic about what its problems might be, but more than anything, accentuate the positives, say how wonderful it is. And then say, in order for this to happen, I need this specific amount for this specific thing. Have all the numbers in your head. I know that orchestra that you heard the other day across the three performances, that orchestra cost £33,000. And knowing that, I can say to a donor, that is what I need this amount of money for. And people tend to like that. If they can say, I am giving this money specifically so that I can say this orchestra is sponsored by me, then that's something that they like. So
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and I mean the biggest challenge is yet to come for the ring cycle next year. I've got to find over £250,000, which for some people that's a drop in the ocean, and I need to find those people who are excited by what we do, for whom that is a drop in the ocean, and then it'll happen. That's just that's what I got to do. So that's going to be this year's problem.
Of £1 million, but you must have your regular benefactors that have actually stayed with you and supported you on this ride, literally.
I have, and they've been very kind. As I say, so for the three operas so far, I've raised about £70,000 per opera. And they've been nicely spread out so that people can sort of, and it is many of the same people giving in this particular way. But for the ring cycle, I need them to get behind it in an even bigger way. And that's the challenge in front of me right now.
This is a huge undertaking. I mean, Yeah, we can't. We have to emphasize that a lot.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
tell me,
absolutely.
I know you spent about, what was it, 12 years in America, was it, where you were working here?
I think it's hilarious that you thought it was that long. No, it was only five. It didn't feel
No, Ben, it was longer
that.
than that.
Well, it was 5 years, and I came back quite a bit to do the odd concert here and there.
Okay.
Um, but the I was in America between '02 and '07 full time,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and during that, the interesting thing where I kind of learnt to do this thing, there was a St. John Passion, which I mean you remember it well, of course, but the it was before the crash of '07.
Mm-hmm.
So it was in 2004, and I remember writing 25 letters to 25 different families in Greenwich, and pretty much all of them came back with here's a check for $1,000, and it was like that was easy. It was, and that was how that concert paid for itself because I just wrote these letters, and people were like, "Ben, we want to support, we want to be there," and that was the climate at the
Mm-hmm.
time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know whether that would happen now or not. That was, I felt in hindsight, that was very easy salesmanship from someone young and tenacious, whereas
Yeah.
now less young and even more tenacious.
But I would have thought that your years in America had really actually helped build that kind of confidence in you to be able to reach out and ask. I mean, we have a different attitude in the States, as you recognize,
Mhm.
than the English do in their own country. It's a completely different perspective.
It's a different perspective about giving as well, because
Hmm.
in America, the you if you give $1,000, then you get a certain amount off your tax bill, and it works that way around. Whereas in the UK, it works the opposite way around. The emphasis is on the charity to get the money, and the
Oh.
giver doesn't get anything particular off their tax bill. So the if you give me £1,000, then the government will turn it into £1,200 for me.
That is brilliant. Okay.
Which is great, but it doesn't give you any input, any kind of reason to give me the money. There's no particular pleasure other than the pleasure of actually giving,
Hmm.
which the that thing about generosity,
Hmm.
that's the only thing I've really got to tap into.
Hmm.
Whereas in America, if you're a charity and if you get the money, of course if you give money, then it comes off your bill for some reason. I don't quite understand how
Okay.
or remember how these days, but there.
And there is that generosity standpoint
There
to
is still some generosity going on, but mainly I want to pay the government less money.
I love it. So, when did you get this idea to start this huge project of doing the ring cycle? And the performances separately with a vision to having the complete ring in one go afterwards.
Um, uh, well, it must have been somewhere in the middle of the sort of back end of the pandemic times. We we came up with the idea, I think, in 2021 to do it. Um, I'd already written some arrangement of the opening of Rheingold for a gala we did a few years ago. Um, and we had this idea to do the ring cycle and also to cut a CD of the music of bits of the arrangements with the music. And the I always said that the reason I was doing it was for a combination of me, for my wife, who is, budding Brynhilde, and indeed for Keir Watson, who was, I thought, the greatest potential Votan that had never been heard.
Hmm.
Of course, I mean, something always goes wrong, and in this case, Keel died in November before we got to do Siegfried, which was, both a surprise and incredibly unfortunate for us all. Um, but the idea was that, we would do this thing, and we had this amazing venue, which is so glorious in its way, and the acoustic is just at the same time very crisp and very forgiving.
Hmm.
So, there are obviously good seats and bad seats, and if you choose to sit too close to the orchestra, that's your own stupid fault. But the sort of the stars aligned, and it seemed to make sense. And I knew the singers, I knew that we had the backing to this, and it seemed to be the right time. So we've gone for it, and now we've got to somehow finish it off.
Yes, you will. You will. Um, what is it about you and your tenacity? I mean, were you just born under a certain star that kind of gave you or gifted you this fantastic sense of courage. I mean, this heroism I talk about, which is akin to Siegfried, which you have just done. Because Siegfried, he's naive and he's young and he thinks he can do anything at this point because he does not know fear. And I guess I could ask you the same question.
And then, I think um, and I've been doing these kind of concerts for a while now. As I mentioned the St. John Passion in 2004, I think it was, we
Mhm.
did that. Um, when I was 16, I did a symphony concert. Similar idea. I got together all the musicians in my local theatre in Staffordshire, and I conducted Beethoven's Fifth Symphony and a few other bits and pieces.
Really?
Um, yeah, it was. I mean, that was the first one. The idea being to try and make some money for my church organ fund that needed restoring, and it sort of that did work out. I did make the money that I needed from it, which was great. And this thing of creating concerts, putting music on, and there are a lot of these things that happen. I mean, I think they happen in New York. They certainly happen in London. Slightly less so in Germany for reasons we may or may not get into, where a lot of singers put on concerts because they want to sing. I am
Hmm.
going to put on Madame Butterfly because I am the next great Madame Butterfly.
Right.
Um, uh, and I do these things 99%. There is a that's not quite 99%. It's like a lot of this is so that I can conduct. I think the one place and the one moment when I find myself in the right place at the right time is when I'm conducting opera. uh, when I've got all those pieces in place, when there is an orchestra of some description in front of me, when there is drama going on, and I'm breathing with the singers and I'm living that drama with them, that is when I'm in the right place at the right time. It's I find it quite annoying when all of the reviews say, "What a great arrangement," because I don't. That's not the point. I'm doing this so that I can conduct it. The whole point is that I want to show that I'm a great conductor. And I've done all of these things in order for that to happen.
Hmm.
Whether that sounds incredibly arrogant about that, I don't know. But becoming a conductor is such a very difficult thing to do.
Hmm.
The one thing people say to budding conductors is, well, put on some concerts. I just seem to have taken that to a bit of a next level.
You surely have. Almost the impossible level. I can't imagine anyone else being able to take these kind of projects on. But you don't seem to be deterred by anything, and you are wearing all the hats. But obviously, from what you've just said, you have the heart of a producer. You have done ever since you were 16. And
Mhm,
now you don't see any difficulties. You don't see any obstacles. You and I have talked about that before with regard to you. But
mhm,
to do this and raise yourself to the level that you have just recently done with Siegfried, because Ben, I sit here now after seeing it and say, there was an entire new level reached that night and a new confidence.
mhm,
And it's not just about your conducting, of course. It is the village that have come together and these wonderful singers who've stayed with you every step of the way that you've really handpicked. Amazing. We'll talk about them in a minute. But your choice of orchestra members this time was far and above what I've heard before. There was a sweetness, there was a nuance, there was a crackling stamina in these 23 players and the organ that you
yep,
utilized at
yep.
the Freemasons Hall, which was incredible. And the fact that, oh, well, it gave everything we needed.
I'm not sure there was necessarily a question in there, but it's the level has been raised. The interesting thing about Siegfried is it is eight soloists, eight very specific soloists. It is much though it's ridiculous length. It is it is a chamber opera, and it is also the closest thing I think Wagner gets to a Shakespearean drama. It's like this is a scene between Siegfried and Mimi. You see their connection, you see um their relationship, such as it was. And I loved how Caroline brought out how damaged Siegfried was by that. I thought that was
Yes,
extraordinary.
I thought that was clever, very clever. Yeah.
Um,
And we're
and then
speaking about Carolyn Staunton, who was your stage director.
she was, yeah, and is. Um, and then the Wanderer comes in. You have that's a very specific little scene, and then you have the return of the first pair again, and the forging of the sword, and it's like it's as close as you get to a movie, I
Yeah,
think. Um,
agreed. Agreed.
and it's just those eight soloists. It doesn't have that kind of there isn't the ensemble section of it like there is with the Valkyries, or like there is with the in Rheingold. You have all those extra characters, Donna and Fro, and those people. Or indeed, he brings in the chorus in Goethe Dämmerung. Siegfried, it stands in a really weird and interesting place.
Hmm.
Carol and I we did a kind of slightly odd joint lecture for the Wagner Society whilst we were over in January, and we said the title we gave ourselves that we dreamt up was "Is Siegfried the Scherzo of the Ring?"
Oh,
That third movement thing of,
interesting.
is it slightly lighter in tone? Does it have a jokey feel to it? What is, what's that? And it was quite interesting how Caroline and my ideas about that diverged. Because on the one hand, musically, it is quite, it certainly moves. It has some remarkable set pieces, and it is that there is an element to it. Whereas dramatically, Siegfried is not a skirt, so it's actually very dark in places.
Hmm.
And so her answer to that question was no, it isn't. Whereas mine was maybe it kind of is. And
Yeah,
we have this conversation, and to have that a relationship with a director for a conductor is absolutely wonderful and actually
yeah,
very rare.
yeah, and quite elastic. I love that. It's like playing with the recipe. That's
Mhm.
fantastic. That's fantastic.
Mit der eigenen Waffe, die sich gewonnen, räumig leicht auf den Weg, gewannen der Weg und Hort. Mein feiner Witz fand ich mir wohl Rat.
Als mein Schwert! In das Wasser floss ein Feuerfloss. Gräbiger Zorn zischt ihm da auf. Wie sehend er floss in des Wassers Flut, fließt er nicht mehr. Starr ward er und steif, errischt der harte Stahl. Heißes Blut, doch fließt ihm bald. Und schwitze noch einmal, dass ich dich schweiße. Not und leidliches Schwert.
Well, let's talk then about your players, your singers. I know there were some stunning performances,
Mhm.
probably most deserved by Catherine Woodward, your wonderful wife, in the role of Brunhilde. A very
Mhm.
short appearance at the end of Siegfried, but as the Times said, glorious singing.
Yeah. Kat has grown into this role. I think this is the right place at the right time for her. Um, Everything you've done with her over the past, what was it, 2016? You started working with her. I think you've built that voice. I offer plaudits go to you for that, Pam. Um, but the stars are really aligning for her a bit now, I hope. Um, the living in Germany thing and the speaking German every day, it does, much though Wagner is about as much like German as Shakespeare is to English. I mean, it's not it's a bit strange. But that knowledge of how to point the language, how the language works, where, why are we using this word in a way that you can't really get from just reading a translated libretto? Why is it in this particular form?
Right.
And understanding it. I think that's really working well for Kat now. And it's great news that this has been recognized. So she's going to Bayreuth this summer, as we're telling the listeners. And she'll be Gerhilde, one of that Valkyrie band. So it is being recognized.
Distinguished.
Yeah, absolutely. The home of Wagner, it is Mecca for Wagner fans. So it's that's really exciting. And then in 2025, I think we can vaguely announce it. She's doing Brünnhilde for a theatre in Germany in The Ring in einen Abend, The Ring in one evening,
Ah,
which is it's a slightly weird truncation of The Ring because it doesn't have any tenors in it. Which
oh, we only get the
So-
best of the women. Well, there's a lot there.
there's plenty to sing. So the there are but being recognized as a proper Brunhilde and all that. So Kat is doing great. I'm absolutely thrilled with the fact that the career is finally taking off as a dramatic soprano, because dramatic sopranos take so long to sort of to mature into the repertoire. So
That's
now
correct.
it's
But you know what
Um,
I sensed from all the performances, and indeed yours as well. When I work with my singers, I talk sometimes about a plugged in element, of excitement, from music to text and the arc of the phrase. And all night in Siegfried, that is what I beheld from everyone. There was a plugged in quality. Now that is really down to you and Carolyn, your vision, the work that is folded lovingly
mhm.
in front of us. And that it just raised everyone's performance.
I think it's a lot of that is I say Caroline and her, she calls it, the German word is Personenregie, which means the personal direction. That is kind of one of her specialities, where
Right.
they get the relationships between the characters are so well worked out,
Mhm.
and worked on very hard in the rehearsal room. Um, um, that knowledge and understanding of every single nuance of the text.
Yes.
There were times in rehearsal when myself and the musical team were sitting for hours on end whilst they just discussed the little nuances of text. And
Mhm.
I think that is vital in 21st century opera making.
Mhm. Okay.
Uh, one of the reviews hilariously said that a former Wotan was sitting behind him and said, "Oh, I think there's far too much stage business. I much preferred when it was park and bark." And I was like, "Why?"
Oh
It's
dear.
like sure, you can stand and just sing, but surely we are telling a story. Surely we are reacting to our other characters telling the story. We need to know
Correct.
every word they're saying. We need to. It is a soap opera unfolding in front of us. If one of the characters in a soap opera was just blank faced, then they wouldn't last in the soap opera for very long.
That's right.
So
And let's remind everyone that this soap opera was written, the libretto was written by Wagner himself, who was no stranger to great psychological exploration between
oh
his
God,
characters.
yeah,
So,
it's
but there's a lot to deal with here, Ben. I mean, and so much which Caroline is actually, bringing to the forefront, of course.
it's very exciting, and the way, as I say, the way that she felt, how I think that especially the character of Siegfried, his arc across the evening,
Yeah.
from very troubled character who'd been, essentially imprisoned against his will by
Yeah.
Mima the dwarf, and the damage that had done on him, and what Mima wanted from this relationship. Mima only wanted one thing. Mima wanted Siegfried to kill the dragon so that Mima could then have the gold, and
Right.
how that worked, and all the different people, everyone's different motivations across the piece. So
Yeah. 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 No, it's thrilling. Let's talk about Mima for a minute and the amazing performance of Holden Madagama.
He is an astonishing person. He is of Native American descent, and is a massive trans activist. He was originally trained as a mezzo, as
Yes.
a Rossini mezzo, and then transitioned. I'm not quite sure when. I met Holden in about 2017, I think it was, when his transition and the voice had changed down to tenor, and it was
Okay.
sort of in its infancy of it, really.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, and I asked Holden in my orchestral repertoire days, I said, can you do Valzaki and is it the Tierhandler, the animal handler in Rosenkavalier? And he just turned up so well prepared,
Mm-hmm.
knowing everything, and just able, even if he was just standing and singing it, to just make people want to watch him.
Mm-hmm.
And he so the voice has grown since then, over the past few years, and he was Mima in Rheingold, and then now this huge Mima part in Siegfried. And what a stage animal, an absolute stage animal, and not afraid to go to interesting vocal lengths with it.
That's right.
He said he's had lessons in how to scream in a healthy fashion. Don't know if I believe that. Don't know if you
It
believe
is
that.
possible. It is possible. It is
But
possible.
the noises Holden made, and as I say, when his character is upset, when his character is trying to really needle Siegfried for something, um,
Yes.
my favorite bit in the first scene, actually, when he says, he's telling Siegfried that his mother has died, and the utter glee when he says "Sie starb," and it's like the glee of evil. And I'm saying there's not much going on in the orchestra at the time, and I'm always watching Holden thinking this is magical,
It
absolutely.
is. It is. He took such risks, and he's such an acrobat on stage. It
Yeah.
just gave a entirely different viewpoint of this character. I was thrilled by his performance, as by everyone's. I
Hmm.
mean, you had a dragon in a sequin suit that, really needed to be in Las Vegas. It was fantastic with all his tongue wagging, which actually I always find in Siegfried, and actually in Flute as well, that the whole issue with slaying a dragon is so difficult to pull off and make it believable. And
Hmm.
here you had a guy in bare feet in this fantastic sequin suit going to town with emulating this viper.
Hmm.
And it was so successful to me. I loved it. Again, it just fit, all these components fit so well in all
It
of your vision.
it's interesting. The nice thing that we've always done over the past 10, 11 years of running this opera company is that the audience has always been very, very close. Uh, and this is the lovely thing about the Freemasons Hall.
Yeah.
It was the lovely thing about the little church in Fulham we used.
Hmm.
And it was less, and we immediately noticed when we did Meistersinger in the Prossarch Theatre,
Yes,
near London Bridge in 2019, you immediately noticed you didn't have that.
that's right. That intimacy was gone, so to speak.
Because if you're in a 1,200 seat auditorium where it's a Prossarch, then you can't see his tongue wagging.
Right.
And you miss that. Whereas
Right.
everyone in the Freemasons Hall, because of the nature of this in the round thing, everyone could see that. And which is why it made its way into the reviews as well.
It's
So
true. It's
I
true.
think this intimate, it doesn't quite I think technically it doesn't quite count as immersive theater, but it is very,
It's
we are
almost there.
we're trying to get the audience really involved, and if they can see, I say, these relationships, these interesting things, then I think they enjoy it more. And it's people keep saying how, a 4 hour and 4.5 hour opera just flew by. So
It's true, Ben. It's very true. The intimacy was key. Would
hmm.
you say that this is something we need to be developing going forward in opera?
It's tricky. I mean, I think acting is vital.
Hmm.
I think good acting. I think the presentation of any text.
Mm-hmm.
is vital. I think you are telling a story. If you want to be an opera singer, I think you're wanting to be an actor as much as you want to be a singer.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
if you're going to say I want to sing Lucia di Lammermoor, then you've got to want to throw your heart on the stage and be a crazy person. You
Mm-hmm.
know, that's got to be a
Mm-hmm.
large part of your desire. It is, um, and I want to work with directors who drag that out of singers. It is very difficult on a massive Pross Arch stage, the Royal Opera, the Metropolitan Opera, these
Right.
huge places. It is just simply difficult to see, and unless you happen to be the conductor himself, when you've got that 30, 50, 40 feet gap to the front row,
Mm-hmm.
it is difficult to see if the dragon is wagging his tongue or not. But I think you get it anyway if the acting is good and the words portray what's going on. I think it's I think all those elements have to come together as much as we possibly
Yeah.
can to create what we said, the Gesamtkunstwerk, the complete work of art. It is vital.
Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Now you have the last opera in the cycle to mount, and this
Yeah.
is huge. Have you started on the arrangement for orchestra? And by the way, I just need to say, there are so few small arrangements out there. Jonathan Dove comes to mind. What you have done has retained the excitement and the thrill in the orchestra.
Mhm.
And I believe that you will be you'll be hiring out this arrangement, you'll be selling this arrangement afterwards.
Yeah, I mean it will be available from the day after we finish it. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got shame about it. If people want to put on a ring cycle or any of the constituent operas for 23 instruments,
Hmm.
absolutely get in touch, 100%. Um, Götterdämmerung is bigger still. It's the first act of Götterdämmerung is longer than the entire of La Bohème. Um, it's and one of the main problems we've had with the arrangement, such as it is that it's exhausting to play for everyone in the band. They're all like, because I'm using 4 wind players where Wagner had 16. I'm
Right.
using what have I got? 3, 4, 5 brass players. When again, Wagner had 16 or maybe 18 brass players. They are doing the jobs of very many people. I have started on Götterdämmerung. At the moment, I'm just finishing the Siegfried's Rhine journey between the prologue and Act One. Um, I I try to keep it as faithful to the original as possible.
Hmm.
So a lot of it is actually downright simple copying, which may or may not sound stupid. But so the credit I can take is actually just keeping as much of Wagner as I possibly can. Um, then I take the wind parts, and if for example you have 2 oboes in thirds
Hmm.
for any given thing, then the oboe will stay on top and the clarinet will play the lower one. If I have 2 clarinets that are originally in thirds, then the clarinet will take the top one and the oboe will take the bottom one to keep the clarinet tone on the top.
Okay. Okay.
The challenge comes with the horn players because horn players, as a general rule, can only play for about 8 or 12 bars at a time before needing about 2 bars off.
Hmm.
It's one of those things. And so Wagner has eight horn players in Götterdämmerung, and you can see he's taking this into account. So horns 1 and 3 will be playing in thirds quite high up, and they'll be doing stuff for about 8 or 12 bars. And then horns 6 and 5 and 7 will then take those lines for another 12 bars. You can see he knows about this
Wow.
problem.
Wow.
And somehow I have to get around that. And one of the ways I do that is with the organ, because the organ doesn't run out of puff.
Right. Right. Right.
But I try and use the organ relatively sparingly because I know that that might not be something that people have available to them when they're taking this arrangement on in the future.
Of
So,
course. Of course. Yeah, I understand that. Yeah, that wise, wise, wise. Wow. So I think we need another benefactor just for extra horns. I
they
love
would, uh,
they get a special mention in the program.
well, we, so one of the funny things in Siegfried, you have in Act Two, there is the famous Siegfried horn call,
Hmm.
where everything stops. It feels a very long time to me, and Siegfried himself just plays the horn.
Yeah.
And that horn call is actually unionized in the UK. I imagine it probably is in America as well.
Oh my God.
It is, that specific bit of music is unionized. You have to have a separate horn player to do that from the horns in the band. So I was looking for it, and as it happened, I didn't find a benefactor for that horn player, but I had to hire her separately from the 3 horn players I have in the band. So it's one of those funny things you find out.
That is amazing. What a bit of trivia for this Siegfried with Regent's Opera.
Yeah,
I love it.
yeah, and it's the case. Every performance of Siegfried will have one single separate horn player for which that 40 bar segment is their job.
That's incredible. It's like
Yeah.
the kicker who comes out in American football, and he better do his job, for those extra points. I love it.
Exactly. Yes.
So when will Götterdämmerung be performed?
Well, that's a sticky question. We're about to announce that it's going to be in 2025 and not 2024.
Okay.
So that is a slightly sticky question. We've got to, yeah.
Fundraise?
Pardon?
Fundraise?
Well, we've got a fundraiser, absolutely, but at the moment, because there's going to be an ever so slight delay with it, for reasons which aren't important or interesting,
Okay.
we've got to sort of tell ticket holders and things. But yeah, but we're going to do it as part of complete ring cycles. So we're not doing Ghost Emerald on its own. We
Okay.
This is not my first rodeo. In 20 between 20 what was it, 11 and 2014, we also did the ring, but in a much, much smaller way, with mainly me on the piano. And in 2013, we did Götterdämmerung, and we'd already announced that in 2014 we were going to do complete ring cycles. And we found that well, not nobody, but not enough audience booked for the Götterdämmerung on its own.
Okay.
warrant
Okay. That I
The
understand. It's a hard opera to sell. It really is. And if you call, Siegfried a scherzo, what do we call or refer to Götterdämmerung?
Well, it is the big fiery finale. It is what
Yeah.
it is. And at the end of which the world will go on fire for your pleasure. It's very, very difficult. I say the first act is 2 hours long, and then it's about 70 minutes and then 80 minutes. Again, therefore, with breaks, it will run over 5 hours, whether you like it or not. And again, other things you learn. If an opera goes over 5 hours in length, from the first note to the last, you have to pay your orchestra more.
That's right.
So it adds to the natural challenge. There's also a chorus in it.
Right.
And
It gets complicated.
it is the very late Wagnerian style. It is, he's done, by this point, indeed, by Act 3 in Siegfried, he's written Meistersinger and he's written Tristan. So we're in a whole new language from where we were in Rheingold and Valkyrie in the first 2 acts of Siegfried. It's an advanced language, and it's very, very difficult.
Wow.
Yeah. So.
Wow. Bits of subtlety here. We didn't know. Now, I want to talk because besides all of this, and besides all of your regular work in Germany, you actually mount these orchestral study weekends. And it seems like every time I turn around, one pops up. And oh, yes, it might be the Egyptian Helen. It might be Vanessa. It might be your upcoming Wozzeck.
Oh,
These
God.
are really, really difficult pieces that you choose. It's almost as if, Ben, I would refer you really are the Siegfried in this situation, because you have no fear about going ahead with large scale opera productions in a weekend, allowing players and singers to come in alike and live this out, try it out. And of course you're really honing up your orchestral skills yourself as a conductor.
That's been one of the things. I mean, the first one of those we did was actually Siegfried Act 1. And I suddenly stood in front of this full orchestra that they had brought this orchestra to me and said, Ben, bring me 3 singers and we'll do this. And I started with the second scene of Siegfried Act 1 because it's relatively straightforward. And I very tentatively started beating in 4, and this noise started coming out, and it's like, oh, naturally this is going well. And these orchestra days, they're tremendously educational for everyone concerned. Possibly for almost me. I mean, I say I have
Mhm.
learned how to be clear, how to breathe with people from doing those. And I've also got through a lot of massive repertoire because the orchestra want to play it and the orchestra want to find, there are plenty of orchestras in London where you can go and you can play a Beethoven symphony in a week, and you can do a concert of a Beethoven symphony.
Right.
But not many of these groups will, well, a couple of groups have come up since to try and do similar things. But we've done most of the Ring. We've done 6 Strauss operas. We've done Peter Grimes. We did the Zemlinsky Lyric Symphony, which is a strange and bonkers piece. We did Tippett's Midsummer Marriage. We did The Love of Three Oranges. And you say I have no fear. Well, I definitely have fear of Wozzeck.
That would be healthy.
Yeah. The next one is in May, and apparently we're going to do Wozzeck in a weekend. Now, blessedly, Wozzeck is only 90 minutes long,
Mhm.
but for a group of players to go from this, the British orchestras are always very good at sight reading, and however good they are at sight reading, Wozzeck it's gonna sound cacophonous for some time. And my job this week really is to sort of get to know it so I can tell them how much of it we're going to do, and we will try and distill it and we'll see what we can do with it. I've got some terrific singers on board for that as well. A girl called Philippa Boyle is singing Marie,
Good.
who and I'm looking forward to it. I love getting to know these new pieces as well.
Yeah.
We did Yennefer recently as well. It's just learning these pieces because the orchestra want to play them, and I'm like, sure, how hard could it be?
You are either the most insane man I've ever known or the most brilliant. I think it's the brilliant part.
There's a very thin line.
How do you find the money for these orchestral weekends?
Well, that's another slightly thorny question because the orchestra does pay for the privilege of doing them. They all pay a sub of 30 or 40 pounds for the weekend. I forget what it is now. And it just about pays for itself. It's only just about. So the company does underwrite them. There are a couple of players in the orchestra who are quite generous with it and offer, a few more than that in terms of pounds. It is tricky. It's
Yeah, I would think so.
but I say it is essential as part of our education workshops. It is essential for, frankly, my own musicianship because when I do these things, again, you feel alive by doing them. You feel alive by learning new music, by engaging with new music that you haven't heard before. Say at this precise moment, I couldn't hum you 2 notes of Wozzeck. But I will spend the next 3 months learning it, and we'll do something with it, and somehow it will be a joyous weekend. The main thing we get out of these weekends is joy, and I think that is utterly vital.
That is fantastic. I love it. I just love it. So how do you find your orchestral members? Do you just have a pool of people you call upon?
For the study days, it is a group of there are a few people who are locked into the different groups in London, and they help to bring it together. An invitation goes out to students. Students play for free. It's a big effort. I'm not too involved in the finding the players thing. I find the singers, and I will lead the days. But if I say 2 good friends and supporters of mine, they put those orchestras together, and I feel hugely privileged to have that to hone my craft as much as anything else.
I would think that with the success of Regent's Opera and your Ring, that you would have players presenting themselves to you to want to be involved in such a project.
Well, the education projects is quite fun like that. they do like to play these pieces, and they do feel, this is, playing Frau and Schatten for the first time. It's like, what is this marvelous music?
Yeah.
Why have we never heard it before? Let's do this. Let's whereas the ring orchestra, I'm paying the ring orchestra top dollar, because I need them.
Yeah.
Um, I, it's not quite ENO rate that I'm paying them, or indeed Royal Opera House rate, but it's pretty close for the amount they would earn at those major institutions for playing
Right.
this stuff.
Huh.
And there is a big pool of professional musicians in London, who you can call upon. My bass trombonist for Siegfried is actually a member of the ENO orchestra. He really wants to play it,
Fabulous.
and he's like, this is something I really want to do. So.
Wow.
It's great. So,
Bravo to you.
mhm.
So, Ben, with all the talk about arts cuts, theaters closing, touring orchestras, groups not having enough money to survive, and of course, the ongoing battle with English National Opera and the Coliseum. Of course, that's been resolved now, but
Well,
it's not going to be to everyone's liking. What is your opinion on this, and what is really happening?
well, w- it's incredibly difficult to say. And I think people are often forgetting in their sort of daily lives of, doing stuff, that art is important. It is something which you get very much in Germany, is that people are kids are indoctrinated into music, art, and indeed opera from a very, very young age. Um, in Germany, I say we, um, in Germany, the kids will be going to the opera. At Christmas, they will all see Hansel and Gretel almost every
Mhm.
single year.
Mhm.
I once saw in Hanover when I was working there, there was a modern opera version of Moby Dick. And I thought it was cacophonous, awful music, but it was full of kids
Yeah.
watching the story and being aware, and being, you know, indoctrinated is the wrong word,
Yes.
um,
Yes.
exposed to modern music that
Yeah.
they could talk about and discuss.
Mhm.
What did you think of this? What did you think of these sounds? And it carries through into German society. If you get in a cab and you say, "I'd like to go to the Staatsoper," the cabbie will say, "Oh, which cast are you seeing tonight?" You know, they will know it is part of life, that culture is important. And indeed, it is part of one of the reasons why so many opera people are in Germany, is because it's written into the German constitution that art is an important thing. Um, and the hilarious thing that, Churchill said was, you know, if somebody said to Churchill, "Well, let's cut the arts funding so that we can spend more on the military," and Churchill said something along the lines of, "If we do that, then what are we fighting for?"
Mm.
And
Beautiful.
it's that whole thing of, we should have this in our lives in Britain, in America. We should have it. We should want it. We should realize it is important. Um, and it's unfortunate that in America, I'm not sure if it's ever been there in government kind of spending. In the UK, the government spending is falling, it's falling away. What should we cut first? Because we've run out of money. First thing that goes is music lessons.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, no,
Mm-hmm.
this
Mm-hmm.
is, it's very, very difficult to know what to do about it. The ENO thing, I don't know if you've seen today, has just been, they've been saying how last night during the performance of The Handmaid's Tale, people were getting the emails saying that they were being made redundant. That happened literally last night. Um, and I that's a whole other ball of wax of, um, you know, funding being taken away, cultural kind of, the axe being taken to cultural things, and why that might be. The Arts Council have given me money in the past,
Mm-hmm.
which has been great. I
Mm-hmm.
think I can't remember when the last time it was that they gave me some money for things, but they haven't given me any money for anything to do with the ring cycle.
Interesting.
The ring cycle has been entirely privately funded. And if you are an opera lover, if you believe that culture should go forward,
Mhm.
if you have a few pounds, dollars, euros to spare, I think, giving it to these causes is not a bad thing. So,
Exactly. Exactly. So you're helping to rewrite an attitude in the UK about the arts, I think, which is essential at this point. I mean, the UK may be following the whole American type pattern, and here you have been doing the seeking out of private funding for years and proving that it can be effective.
well, it's at the moment, I think it's the only way. Corporate sponsorship has also basically fallen out of the market,
Mhm.
fallen out of existence. A major Swiss bank, recently stopped their funding of the London Symphony Orchestra. Um, it's really, really difficult.
Yeah, it is. It is.
In the current climate where we're all feeling the pinch, you know, it's very, very difficult. So, not pretending it's going to be easy because it isn't.
No, it's not. But you're doing the work and you're making a very good point that it is not impossible, as pointed out in the Times review of Siegfried, which was very important, I thought,
It's
because
not
the world is
it's very
shifting.
difficult.
The world is shifting on its axis. I know you sweat blood when you're raising money, but you managed to get the job done and you managed to do it very quietly. And I'm always impressed by that.
Well, it is what's got to be done, and if I'm the only one doing it, then then we'll do it. This because this is something I say. This particular vision, this particular ring cycle, is something that I've got to do. I've got to finish it, and it's
I love it.
yeah.
Okay.
So.
And what is your dream job after this, Ben?
Oh, it's a shame they've already given Tony Pappano's job at the Royal Opera away. Very good at that job. I'd be very happy. I'd love to conduct and have and be a major part of a major opera house. I mean,
Mhm,
this is the thing, to be part of a fabric of an institution
mhm,
that is positively putting on interesting work,
mhm, mhm.
as well as all the classics. I mean, it's important to ground ourselves in that too. And you know, as I say, if the taxi driver is saying, "Oh, which Tosca did you see?" then
Yeah,
I think that's important.
you've achieved a lot.
Yeah.
It's fantastic, man. Well, you are a star. I have to say, you are a star. And maybe it will become just that you develop your own significant opera house for Regent's Opera, and you will continue in this form.
Ugh.
And have faith, my dear. Remember how I started this interview about heroism to endure one more moment, and you've done it, and you will continue to do it. And I so appreciate you being with me today and sharing. I mean, really. And bravo again to the performance of Siegfried that I saw in London. And I look forward to the complete ring when we get there. And
When we
everyone out there, you need to seek out regentsopera.com and benwoodwardconductor.com for more information on everything that he is up to. This is important, and this is our future in the arts. We have to keep life spinning.
oh,
Ben,
goodness.
thanks so much for being on center stage. It's always a
My pleasure.
pleasure. I will see you at Bayreuth. And
Literally you will. You literally will.
and to everyone else out there, can you please visit Center Stage with PamelaKoon.com for more shows like this and more information on the arts. And remember, it is the arts which keeps us out of chaos in life and gives us so much joy, as Ben Woodward has just said. So to all my listeners, stay safe out there. This is Pamela Kuhn, and the curtain is now down on Center Stage.